Thank you. You know, I decided to ditch my speech an hour ago, and now I'm rethinking. But I wanted to speak from my heart. You're never too old to have a happy childhood. You know, I had a very auspicious beginning in my life, born in 1965 and moving to Central Falls. And literally, my first experience was being hooked up to IVs at 1 year old, suffering from malnourishment. And I had the distended stomach, you know, the IV, the crust around my nose. And it's like my mom said, Viola, I don't know what was wrong with you. Doctor said I had bad milk. And then every memory from then on was about deprivation, hunger. And when you're hungry, there is no dreams. There is no levity, the unbridled joy of childhood. And worst of all, there is no hope. I've jumped into garbage bins for food. You know, those prepared meals that they had back in the day with cans of chili and wrapped sandwiches. People would throw them in garbage bins, perfectly intact. So I would eat them. I befriended friends who I knew had parents who cooked them 3 meals a day. I would beg strangers for money on the street, some being very lascivious. I hoped. I prayed. It's very important for me to express to this room the power of humanitarianism. That there was no one who saw me because the big 1,000-pound gorilla that was on my back was the big P word, which is poverty. And when you're poor, nobody sees you. I was a bedwetter. I went to school. I smelled. I never had guests who came over to the house. We bought furniture from Salvation Army, or we got it from the side of the road. You know, those sort of abandoned mattresses and little chest of drawers. That was me, Viola. So how do you get from there to greatness? People ask me that all the time. And the only way I can answer it is through this. When you do things alone, it dies with you. When you do things for others and for the world, it remains and it is immortal. And the story that is so prevalent with that definition is when I was 25 and I made my way to Juilliard and I still felt lost. I still felt like no one saw me. So I applied for this little grant at Juilliard and they gave me $2,500 to go on a cultural arts safari in the Gambia, West Africa, to study the music, folklore, and dance of 4 different tribes. I was amazed. Coming from Eurocentric training. And the story I want to tell to you all is of the Kenyala. They were women who came into the Mandinka tribe compounds, dressed in oversized clothes and painted faces. And they had big djembe drums on them, talking drums. And they came into the compound screaming, laughing, making really wild faces. And I remember being really confused by it. And slowly, as they began to scream and jubilate, slowly people began to jubilate and scream with them. And they would play their drums. And they sang a song that translated, "I did not come here for food. My stomach is full. I did not come here for food. I came for much more." And they passed a calabash around that had an oatmeal peanut combination in it. And as more and more people joined, they began to scream even louder. They began to roll over each other, laughing, dancing, jubilating, singing the song, "I did not come here for food," eating the oatmeal peanut combination, passing it to people and screaming even louder. Finally, 100 people screaming, 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 and I finally leaned into someone and I said, "What are we doing?" And someone said, "Viola, the Kenyala people, they're women who cannot have children. They're infertile. And children are the biggest blessing in Africa. And they feel like God just didn't hear their deepest prayer. And so the point of this ritual is to make as much noise as we can to part the heavens so God can hear them and rain down the blessing." Myths and rituals. It's your conscious reminding you of your own existence. It's a ritual where people were gathering and investing in the thing in you that you felt wasn't giving you any meaning. That's love. That's investing in the spiritual, the emotional, the growth in another. And they screamed and yelled and screamed and yelled and laughed for hours until they were exhausted. That's what 6-year-old Viola needed. I needed someone to see what I lived for and what was standing in the way of what I lived for. And as I moved through my life, those are the people that I sought out. Because, listen, my success is the EGOT. My significance is what I'm leaving behind. That is the absolute creation that my husband and I just planted in the world, which is the Davis Tennant Foundation, which I'm totally committed to the families in Central Falls, Rhode Island, and giving them the tools that they need. Families that are living in food insecurity, families that are living in poverty, in housing crisis, in healthcare crisis. It's my gift to little Viola, because I don't want to leave her behind. It's like they say, those are the two most important people in your life, your 6-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. I want to make her squeal, and I want to make her feel less alone. You can either leave something for people, or you can leave something in people. And I realized from a very early age, fortunately, unfortunately, that ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. The memory of that hunger and that pain of poverty and the trauma of living in violence is what moves me through my life and has been my greatest gift. I became the caterpillar. And my hope, my prayer, I don't want any more little Violas. I don't want anyone rolling through the world thinking that they can't get at their dreams. Because sometimes that's the only place that you exist. I am inspired by being in this room because I know that when I share my story in a room full of people who have empathy, shame can't exist. I know that you see me. And I know that you see 6-year-old Viola. She's right here. She's squealing. Thank you for this award. Thank you for your commitment to hunger, to deprivation. And thank you for parting the heavens so God can rain down the prayer that should be allotted for every single human being on this earth. Thank you.